Imagine it's 9th of November 2002. You are a 19-year-old garbage collector living in King's Lynn, England. Your mornings begin before sunrise, clinging to the side of a refuse truck in a fluorescent jacket while cold air cuts through your gloves. You do not live in luxury. You live in a world of weekly wages, cheap takeaways, noisy streets, and the kind of bills that arrive before the last ones are paid. Your savings are thin enough to fit in your pocket, and your future looks like the same route, the same bins, the same back streets, week after week. People like you are not supposed to become rich. People like you are supposed to keep moving, keep working, and keep hoping nothing breaks. Then one ticket turns you into the winner of £9.7 million. If you have ever wondered why a person can go from poor to rich and back to poor faster than they ever escape poverty, stay with me. What you are about to hear is not a theory. It is a pattern. It has happened before. And if you find value in this kind of historical clarity, subscribing takes 2 seconds and keeps you ahead of what most people never see coming. At first, the story looks simple. A poor young man gets the one thing he was missing. Money. Lots of it. Enough to buy houses, cars, parties, peace, freedom, maybe even a second life. But that is not what sudden wealth usually gives a person. It gives speed. And speed is dangerous when the steering wheel is loose. Michael Carroll became one of Britain's most famous lottery winners almost overnight. The newspapers loved him because he looked like a ready-made warning. Young, loud, rough around the edges, thrilled by the spotlight. By 2006, his biographer told the BBC that the money was almost gone and that he had no cash assets left. The miracle had turned into a bonfire. The same hands that once lifted dustbins were now trying to shovel away the ashes of a fortune that should have lasted for decades. This video is about why that happens. Not just to one reckless teenager, and not just in Britain. It happened in Pennsylvania, it happened in West Virginia, it happened in New Jersey, it happened in Virginia, it happened to people who were poor before the money came, and it happened to people who were already rich. The names change, the country changes, the decade changes, but the structure of the collapse stays strangely familiar. Before we go further, there is something important to understand. One famous number in this discussion is shaky. You've probably heard the claim that 70% of lottery winners go broke in a few years. In 2018, the National Endowment for Financial Education said that statistic was not backed by its research. So this is not a sermon built on a fake number. It is an autopsy built on real cases. Enough winners really did crash, and crash hard, that the pattern deserves a close look. The basic mechanism is simpler than most people think. A lottery win does not just change your bank balance. It changes your speed, your social circle, your temptations, your risks, and your daily costs all at once. It is like bolting a jet engine onto a shopping cart. The engine is real, the power is real, but the frame was never built for that force. Poor people usually know exactly where every dollar goes, because they have to. Scarcity is cruel, but it teaches counting. It teaches delay. It teaches repair. It teaches how to say, not this month. Sudden wealth often does the opposite. It removes the old brakes before new ones are built. The winner sees a mountain of money. But what they often really have is a stream, and sometimes just a stream after taxes, after fees, after gifts, after loans, after bad deals, after people start appearing with open hands and urgent stories. There is also something deeper going on. Money is never just money. It is identity. It is family politics. It is status. It is guilt. It is the need to prove that you deserve what you suddenly have. A lottery win drops a new life into your lap before your mind has built shelves for it. And when the shelves are weak, the whole cupboard comes down. This brings us directly to the first part of the story. Long before Michael Carroll became tabloid fuel in Britain, William Bud Post was living a life that felt one missed payment away from collapse. On the day he bought his winning ticket in Pennsylvania in 1988, he told reporters he had $2.46 in his bank account. He was on disability. He pawned a ring for $40 and handed the cash to his landlady and occasional girlfriend, Ann Carpick, for 40 lottery tickets. One of them won. The jackpot was worth $16.2 million, but that number, glittering and enormous, hid the shape of the money. Post did not walk away with a giant vault. He received the first of 26 annual payments, each worth $497,953.47. Within 2 weeks, according to his obituary in the Seattle Times archive, he had spent more than $300,000. He bought a liquor license. He leased a Florida restaurant for his brother and sister. He bought a used car lot and its fleet for another brother. He even bought a twin-engine plane, though he did not have a pilot's license. That is the first mechanism in action. Sudden wealth does not arrive alone. It arrives pulling a train of unfinished desires behind it. Every old dream that had been waiting in the dark now rushes forward at once. The poor man who once compared brands at the grocery store suddenly tries to buy years of missed status in a single season. He is not just spending money, he is trying to close emotional distance. He is trying to buy the life he feels he should have had already. But spending was only the start. Post was $500,000 in debt within 3 months. Think about how fast that is. A man can stay poor for 10 years without changing zip code, furniture, or friends. Post moved in the opposite direction at storm speed. It was like watching a drought-stricken field get a flood instead of rain. The water came, yes, but it came so violently that it tore up the soil. Then came the second layer of damage, the social explosion. His brother later tried to hire a contract killer to murder him and his 6th wife. Karpik sued, saying they had agreed to split the winnings, and a judge eventually ruled that she was owed 1/3 of the proceeds. His dream mansion in Oil City, bought for $395,000, began to decay around him. Visitors described plywood-covered windows, a debris-filled swimming pool, weeds in the yard, and a security system that chirped every minute like a nervous bird trapped in a ruined house. Look at what happened next. Post tried to escape by selling things off. He sold the mansion for $65,000. He auctioned off the remaining lottery payments. He came out of bankruptcy with $1 million free and clear and spent most of that too. By the late 1990s, he had burned through homes, trucks, cars, motorcycles, televisions, a camper, computers, and a sailboat. After prison and further decline, he was reportedly living on a $450 monthly disability check. This is the part many viewers miss. Bud Post did not fail because he was uniquely foolish. He failed because the lottery multiplied everything that was already fragile. Weak boundaries became expensive boundaries. Family conflict became high-stakes conflict. Old habits became luxury habits. Small mistakes became mistakes with 6 zeros attached. The money did not fix the cracks in the wall. It simply poured through them. Here's something I want you to think about before we go further. If your income became 100 times larger tomorrow, but your judgment, your family dynamics, and your emotional habits stayed exactly the same, what would break first? Drop your answer in the comments. Seriously. Because what I'm about to show you next is the part of this story that most people never hear, and it changes everything. People often assume lottery collapse is mainly a poor person's problem. That if the winner had started with better manners, better schooling, or better taste, the money would have been safe. Then history gives us Andrew Jack Whittaker Jr. and tears that illusion apart. Whittaker was not poor when he won. He was already a successful contractor from West Virginia, owner of several businesses, a man doing $16 million to $17 million of work by his own account. On Christmas Day 2002, he won the Powerball jackpot, $314.9 million. At that time, the largest undivided jackpot in history. He chose the lump sum of $170.5 million. After taxes, officials said he would clear $113.4 million. If money alone created wisdom, Whittaker should have been safe. He already understood business. He already had experience with large numbers. He was 55 years old, not 19. He talked about tithing to pastors, helping churches, feeding people, clothing children, and at first he did give generously. ABC News reported that he gave away at least $50 million in houses, cars, and cash. He handed over $15 million for the construction of 2 churches alone. So why did his life still begin to come apart? Because the second major mechanism is not ignorance. It is exposure. A public jackpot turns a person into a human lighthouse. Every ship in the fog starts steering toward it. Some arrive with honest need. Many arrive with hunger. Some arrive with lies. And the winner, especially one who wants to be generous, has to stand there night after night, deciding which knock on the door is real. Whittaker described being buried in requests. There were so many letters that, according to ABC's account, staff spent 10 hours at a time opening envelopes. People asked for houses, cars, carpet, entertainment systems, almost anything you can imagine. He later said he had faced over 400 legal claims against him or one of his companies since the win, and spent at least $3 million fighting lawsuits. Read that again in human terms. The money did not just enlarge his options, it enlarged his attack surface. It made him visible to strangers, opportunists, and people who believed his fortune had somehow become public property. A bank vault has thick steel walls. A lottery winner has a front door, a phone, a mailbox, and relatives. And this is where history gets uncomfortable. Whittaker's downfall was not only legal and financial, it was emotional. Fame wrapped around his money like ivy around a house, and soon he could not see the walls underneath. He began drinking heavily. He threw cash around in bars. He said everybody wanted something for nothing. The man who thought he had been given a gift began to speak as if he had been mocked. This is the hidden tax of sudden wealth. Not the tax bill from the government, though that matters too. The hidden tax is attention. Attention turns into requests. Requests turn into guilt. Guilt turns into bad decisions. Bad decisions invite more attention. It is a wheel, and once it starts spinning, the winner can begin mistaking motion for control. Now here is where it gets interesting. Whittaker was not undone because he had never seen money before. He was undone because winning pushed him out of the role of businessman and into the role of symbol. He became Santa Claus, local celebrity, lawsuit target, and walking headline all at once. The jackpot did not simply make him richer, it made him reachable. That is why many poor people, for all their hardship, can remain financially stable in a narrow sense for long stretches. Their lives are hard, but the number of people trying to drain them is limited. The lottery reverses that in an instant. It does not just fill the reservoir. It blows holes in the dam. This leads to the second part of this story. Even when the winner is not being hunted by lawsuits or crushed by public attention, there is another trap waiting. It is the trap of scale. Small bad habits do not stay small when the numbers get bigger. They grow teeth. Evelyn Adams understood chance better than almost anyone alive, or so it seemed. On October 24, 1985, the New Jersey convenience store manager won a $3.9 million jackpot. Then, just months later, she won again. In February 1986, the New York Times reported that the 32-year-old from Point Pleasant Beach had claimed another $1.4 million. Lottery officials called her the state's first two-time million-dollar winner. Experts put the odds of one person winning two top prizes in a lifetime at about 17.3 trillion to 1. Think about what that means emotionally. Once is luck. Twice can feel like destiny. Twice can feel like proof that the universe has singled you out. And that feeling is dangerous because it whispers a lie. It tells the winner that the rules no longer apply with full force. It tells them they have a special relationship with chance. Years later, Adams said she had lost much of her fortune in Atlantic City. The details matter because they reveal the third mechanism. Sudden wealth does not erase old appetites, it funds them. If a person already has a habit of chasing excitement, they do not become calm after winning. They simply get better fuel. The lottery is a strange mirror. It reflects desire back at the winner, but bigger. A person who wanted relief now wants comfort. A person who wanted comfort now wants status. A person who wanted status now wants thrill. The line keeps moving. That is why a jackpot can feel like seawater to a thirsty man. The more he drinks, the less satisfied he becomes. We can see the same trap in a very different form in Virginia. In January 1993, Suzanne Mullins bought a winning ticket worth $4.2 million. She planned to split the jackpot 3 ways with her husband and daughter. After taxes, her own share came to 20 annual payments of $47,778.84. That sounds safe. It sounds measured. It sounds like the cautious path. But life does not always crash through the front door wearing gold chains and bad friends. Sometimes it comes dressed as illness. In 1998, Mullins took a loan of $197,146.15 against her future payments. Her lawyer later said a son-in-law's long illness left the family with medical bills that exceeded $1 million and no health insurance. When Virginia later changed its rules to allow a lump sum cash out, she took the remaining amount and stopped making payments on the earlier loan. A judge later set damages at $146.50. Do you see the pattern? One case looks like gambling, another looks like family crisis, one looks reckless. Another looks tragic, but the mechanism underneath is the same. The jackpot creates the illusion of permanence. It makes future money feel like present money. It invites the winner to live against tomorrow. And when tomorrow finally arrives, it arrives carrying a bill. Annuity is a formal word. It simply means money paid out over time, like a slow drip from a very large tank. Many winners look at the full prize number and think in mansion numbers, not drip numbers. They feel rich in total, but cash poor in real time. That gap between headline wealth and usable cash can become a trapdoor under the feet. Most people will never know what you now know. Most people will keep trusting stories that are neat because they are simple. If you are still here, you are not most people. Hit subscribe. Because the next section is the part this channel was made for, the part they never put in textbooks. Now observe what all of these cases have in common. Different countries, different decades, different personalities. Same result. Bud Post started poor and spent like every buried dream had to be paid in full before sunset. Jack Whittaker started rich and still got crushed under publicity, requests, lawsuits, and grief. Evelyn Adams hit impossible odds twice, then kept walking toward games of chance as if the first miracle had changed the math. Suzanne Mullins chose a slower payout, then discovered that even slow money can be turned into fragile money when life forces you to borrow against the future. The same mechanism. Different winners. The lottery does not destroy people because they are too stupid for money. That story is too easy. History shows something more unsettling. Sudden wealth collides with whatever system is already running in a person's life. If the system is built on shaky habits, the money accelerates those habits. If the system is built on weak boundaries, the money attracts people who test those boundaries. If the system is built on public approval, the money turns the crowd into a storm. This is why the common image of the reckless winner buying sports cars misses the deeper truth. The car is not the cause, it is the symptom. The real cause is structural mismatch. A person has one level of emotional training, one level of social protection, one level of financial understanding, and one level of daily spending discipline. Then the size of the numbers jumps 50 times or 100 times in one afternoon. It is like transplanting a village water pipe into the middle of a dam. Pressure alone becomes a form of violence. There is another uncomfortable fact. Research on Florida lottery winners found that for financially distressed people, prizes in the $50,000 to $150,000 range only postponed bankruptcy rather than preventing it. The cash helped for a while, then the older pressures came back. The win acted less like surgery and more like pain medicine. Relief, then return. And the effect does not even stop with the winner. A Philadelphia Federal Reserve paper on Canadian neighborhoods found that when one person in a tiny area won a lottery prize, nearby bankruptcies rose. A win equal to the sample's median annual income, $29,229 Canadian dollars, increased neighbor bankruptcies in the next 3 years by about 6.59%. In year 3 alone, the effect was even stronger. That is one of the strangest findings in this whole story. Even people who do not win can get pulled into the fantasy. They see new spending, they copy the signal, they borrow to imitate a life that is not really theirs. At this point, the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. Lottery money behaves less like a cure and more like an amplifier. It makes existing music louder. If the tune underneath is disciplined, private, and measured, the sound can remain beautiful. If the tune underneath is chaotic, lonely, or hungry for validation, the speakers blow out. And this is where the human cost comes into focus. Who gets hurt the most? Not always the person with the lowest income. Often it is the person with the thinnest buffer between money and emotion. Take Callie Rogers in Britain. In 2003, the BBC introduced her to the public as a 16-year-old from Cockermouth, Cumbria, living on a council estate with her foster parents. She had won £1.875 million as one of 8 winners sharing a £15 million prize. She spoke like many young winners do. She wanted to help family. She said she would not go wild and spend loads. She said she would take advice and see an accountant. Those words are striking because they show that collapse does not begin with evil plans. It begins with normal hopes in an abnormal situation. The youngest winners, the loneliest winners, the winners from unstable families, and the winners who suddenly become public property are standing closest to the edge. They are like people handed a castle with no gate. Everyone can walk in. Every cousin has a business idea. Every ex-friend has a story. Every purchase becomes a public test of character. If they spend, they are foolish. If they refuse, they are selfish. There is no safe role to play for long. Billy Bob Harrell Jr. shows how fast that pressure can turn lethal. In June 1997, he and his wife held the only winning ticket for a $31 million Lotto Texas jackpot. He chose 25 annual payments of $1.24 million. He bought a ranch. He bought homes for family members. He bought new cars for himself, his wife, and the children. He gave heavily to his church. On paper, this looked like kindness. In reality, it turned him into a walking answer to every request in his orbit. The Houston Press reported that family, friends, fellow worshippers, and strangers were all putting the touch on him. His spending and lending spiraled. His marriage cracked. Less than 2 years after the win, on May 22, 1999, he took his own life. That is not just a money story. It is a story about a man being slowly hollowed out by obligation until the fortune sounded less like freedom and more like noise. Janet Leigh's story reveals a different kind of wound. In 1993, the 60-year-old won $18 million in Illinois. She became known for generous giving and high-profile philanthropy. She was receiving yearly installment payments of about $620,000. Yet by 2001, after selling rights to future payments for a lump sum and piling up debts, she filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. Reports at the time said she had less than $700 to her name and $2.5 million in debt. That case matters because it breaks another lazy myth. Not every ruined winner drank away the jackpot or raced sports cars at midnight. Some winners tried to become heroes. But generosity without structure can leak money just as fast as greed. A bucket with holes does not care whether the water was poured out in love or in vanity. Middle-class savers can be hit too, especially when the prize changes how others see them. Pensioners, small business owners, and families living one illness away from debt may look secure from the outside, but a win can create hidden obligations. Someone gets sick. Someone asks for a loan. Someone wants help with a house deposit. Someone expects a rescue because how could you say no now? The winner becomes the local fire station, expected to answer every alarm. This is why Suzanne Mullins matters. Her story was not champagne and speedboats. It was medical bills, cash flow pressure, and borrowing against future checks. The pain was ordinary. That is what makes it powerful. Lottery collapse does not require a mansion or a cocaine habit. Sometimes all it takes is one family emergency, plus the false comfort of a future stream of money. The same social pressure shows up in poor neighborhoods around winners. The Canadian study found that neighbors increased debt and then bankruptcy after nearby lottery wins. The win was contagious, but not in the way anyone wants. It spread comparison. It spread performance. It spread the urge to look richer than your balance sheet. One house gets a new truck in the driveway, and suddenly 5 other households start stretching. Envy is a quiet lender. It offers easy terms at the start and hard collections later. So when we ask why winners can end up broke faster than poor people, this is the answer. Poor people often move inside limits they know by heart. Their world is painful, but mapped. The winner enters a new world with no map, no tested rules, and bright lights everywhere. Poverty is a long winter. Sudden wealth can be an avalanche. One is grinding and familiar. The other is fast enough to bury you before you understand the slope. The question is not whether this pattern will repeat. History has already answered that. The only question is whether you will see it before it sees you. If this channel helps you think differently about the world you live in, subscribe. It costs nothing, and it might change everything. So what did the survivors do differently? Here the record becomes more hopeful and more surprising, because the most honest answer is not that all lottery winners are doomed. They are not. In fact, some of the best research we have points the other way. A long-run Swedish study surveyed more than 3,000 lottery winners between 5 and 22 years after their wins. It found sustained increases in life satisfaction, and it found that large prize winners were still wealthier more than a decade later. A German study that followed 617 households also found improved life satisfaction after lottery wins. In other words, the disaster stories are real, but they are not the whole picture. The camera loves fire. It almost never films the house that stayed standing. The historical record shows that those who came through this period largely shared 3 characteristics, even if their personalities were very different. First, they slowed the tempo. They did not treat the win like a starter pistol. They gave themselves time before claiming, time before announcing, time before buying, time before becoming a different person in public. Delay sounds boring, but boring is sometimes the strongest lock on the door. Second, they built barriers between themselves and other people's demands. Privacy mattered. In 2018, a New Hampshire Powerball winner fought in court to stay anonymous after winning $559.7 million, eventually collecting about $264 million after taxes through a trust. That case mattered because it showed that secrecy is not selfishness, it is insulation. It is the difference between owning money and being owned by everyone else's plans for it. Third, the winners who stayed intact tended to treat the money as a system, not a feeling. They kept working or reduced work slowly. The Swedish evidence suggests winners often cut back on labor a bit, but rarely quit altogether. They spent over many years rather than in one burst. That matters. A fortune is not a pile of fuel to be set on fire for warmth. It is an engine that needs maintenance, boundaries, and a driver who knows when not to touch the accelerator. Notice what is missing from this list. Genius, fancy education, perfect self-control. The survivors were not superhuman. They were simply slower, quieter, and harder to reach. History rewards that more often than drama does. Now come back to the young garbage collector in King's Lynn. Imagine the night after the cameras leave. The ticket is still real. The money is still real. But so are the old instincts, the old friends, the old wounds, the old need to prove something. Michael Carroll once had a life measured in shifts, wages, and limits. Then the limits vanished faster than the mind that had learned to live inside them. That is the final lesson. The lottery does not usually ruin people because money is evil. It ruins people when a sudden rise in financial power is not matched by a rise in structure. The danger is not the jackpot itself. The danger is the gap between the size of the money and the strength of the container holding it. When the container is weak, the fortune does not settle. It spills. And because that spill is public, people misunderstand it. They think the winner had too much and deserved the fall. More often, the truth is messier. The money arrived faster than trust, judgment, privacy, and self-knowledge could be built. The collapse looked sudden only because the cameras arrived late. History also shows something else. The poorest person in the room is not always the most fragile. Sometimes the most fragile person is the one whose life has just been blown open so fast that everyone mistakes expansion for stability. That is why a poor person can survive hardship for years, while a winner can burn through millions in less time than it takes to escape the habits of scarcity. The poor person knows the weight of every brick. The winner is suddenly standing on a balcony built overnight. This is historical and educational analysis. It is not financial advice. Every individual situation is different. Please consult a qualified professional before making any financial decision. This video is not for everyone. Most people will dismiss it. But if one person in your life needs to hear this, share it with them. Not because it will change the world, because it might change their world. Subscribe for more, and I will see you in the next one.